So do you do like transitions as well? I mean, like employment, of course, they will need transitions to the new company.
In Auckland, we've got a transition contract, so we do that. That's government funded. That's funded through the Ministry of Social Development. So we only run those in Auckland and Wellington. Unfortunately, we'd love to run them around the country, but it comes down to funding at the end of the day.
But it's possible to get that right across the country, right?
We can give you help anyway through the branches. We are reliant. I don't think we'll be getting it all around the country anytime soon, but we'll keep working with the Ministry of Social Development on trying to do that, because helping people into employment is a pretty cool thing. So we do want to do that more than. But currently, that service is only available in Auckland and Wellington.
And then if there will be problems, of course, it's no longer going to be under your scope. Like, let's say an autistic person was hired and then he's got problem with...
No, we do on-job support. So there's a... essentially, why we're so successful is the fact that we try to match it right to begin with. So we work with the strengths and the interests of the person, and then try to find an employer that's willing to match that, who's in a similar field to those interests. And then we work with both the employer and the employee to get things ready, and so it can be successful. So we still work with employees when they're in jobs with on-job support as well, and that's for a period of time. So what we find is over time you don't need to continually help, but certainly to begin with there's quite an intense period of time where you do try to help and support, but that lessens over a period of time.
So do we have many employers who are open to...
It's getting better, I think. We just did a pretty big piece on the Sunday show on TV NZ, and followed through autistic adults through their journey, which was pretty cool. And I think we're seeing far more interest now from employers around understanding that it's not a charity, it's actually going to benefit them. So it's not just a charity, it's actually, if you employ someone with autism, if you employ an autistic adult, you're going to have a very loyal employee who could possibly stay for a long period of time. So people are seeing it now more as a benefit for their organisation as well as a benefit for the autistic adult too. Yeah, so we try to frame it now not as a charity, it's actually going to benefit your organisation too.
How are we managing in terms of like COVID? You know, when we had lockdowns last time, and then because we have this routine that they will have these sessions every day to Autism NZ, and then suddenly lockdown, and then and then after the lockdown they can start going back. Did you do a transition on that?
It's hard. It was mixed actually. So a lot of lockdowns was a pretty unusual time for everybody, right? But for our community it was quite difficult. At the same time, because homes, if we focus on kids or children, I guess, homes is their safe space a lot of the times. To have school and home all bundled into one was and can be quite challenging. A lot of kids really like staying at home, and adults like staying at home as well. So the actual being at home part of it wasn't necessarily the challenge. A lot of the challenges was actually transitioning back into school. And we're seeing now that there's a higher rate of truancy and a higher rate of children not turning up to school in general, just because that transition back to school has been quite difficult for people. So looking at a schooling environment that's been a challenge for our community was more about how do we transition the children back into school rather than the lockdown itself. The challenge with the lockdown was for those autistic children who get support, not being able to access that support was pretty difficult for family whānau. Focusing on children here, obviously, that was pretty difficult. Same with adults. So adults who had support and they couldn't get it, then it can take it is the gold standard tool. So you're going to come out of our clinic with a really solid diagnosis, one way or the other, whether you're autistic or whether you're not. That should be recognised everywhere in the country, which is really important.
Right, so it's 1 day result.
Only 1 day a week, and it can take up to 1 day to diagnose. Yeah.
Sorry,
so we tend to do one family or one person a week, I think it is.
Yeah, okay.
It's only a small pilot. There's still a small cost to it as well. We didn't get enough funding to cover all the costs, but we're charging $500, I think, $550. Whereas if you went private, it can be up to $1,500 for the diagnosis. And public, there's a significant waiting list. So we're trying to find a middle ground where those who can afford a little bit, it's not as expensive as private, they can come here and get the most standard diagnosis.
At least they have options. Like for me, in terms of our journey, it could be different for the rest or for others, but for us, we've waited quite a bit, and then lockdown came, and then there's this huge 200 plus waiting list now that has blown up. Like, okay, now we have to wait until...
Yes, I know. And that's the other part. So if you get diagnosed through our clinic, we can link you to our support team here, which is good. So straight away, one thing families tell me all the time, particularly families, but also adults, is you get diagnosed, you get given a couple of brochures and wished all the best sort of thing. So at least here you can talk to somebody so we can link you into our Wellington branch, currently vacant, but we're about to have someone fill that role shortly. We can link you into our Wellington branch and start getting support earlier, which is, and ultimately that model we'd love to take around the country. Right. But again, it's funding. So
yeah, so the more we can get support, perhaps the more possible, the bigger the possibilities.
Yeah, so the challenge with diagnosis is when you talk to people about funding that, because it is quite costly. They say the government should be doing that, and they're right, the government should be doing that. So it's hard to get people to understand that they're not doing it as well as they should or could be, and that we need that support and that funding to do it better or differently, or just help people that need help. This is creating a significant difference in the lives of the people that we're diagnosing, which is cool and amazing. But it's been really challenging for us to get this off the ground. It's costly. Doing it one day a week is quite hard. We'd like to do it more than that, but again, it just comes down to funding.
In terms of funding, the more support we can get, the faster the outcome, or the better the outcome will be. And then
absolutely. And so funding in general, right? So funding for us as an organisation, but funding for family, whānau and autistic adults. Both of those, I think, the more funding we get as an organisation, because we're a charity and we're not for profit, that money all goes back into the organisation to help more people. No one benefits out of more funding. It just goes back out to the community. So the more we get, the more we can do, and the more the families and adults, the more funding and support they get, the better chance they've got. We'd suggest you get on those programs as quick as you can. Just creates a bit of an understanding of autism in the family unit, and that's really important.
Yeah. So in our case, again, because when we found out maybe he's in the autism spectrum for my son, and then we thought where should we go? Do we need to go to the GP or the psychiatrist? Or a lot of confusion. There's no standard.
Yep. Your journey is unfortunately very similar to a lot of other people's journey. It's not a clear process, and it's different in different areas and all sorts of stuff. So essentially, you've got to try to get into the child support services within the DHB, which will change obviously moving forward. But essentially, that's the public approach. So, and you generally have to have a referral from your GP. So generally, that's how it works. So you've got to be a GP. Getting a referral from your GP sometimes can be quite difficult. And all due respect to GPs, I think GPs are great. But they're just that, aren't they? They're general practitioners, so they're supposed to know a little bit about lots of stuff. So they are autism experts, and that's not what their job is. So, ultimately, I think coming to us would be a good start, and then we can point you in the right direction from there. As I said, the process is different in every area, and if you want to go private or public, and many different questions to answer. As I said, the wait list is significant in most areas if you go public. If you go private, it can be quite expensive, so that's the balance.
What is autism in the eyes of Dane?
It's a different way of thinking. Autism is a different way of thinking. And someone, I think Dr. Paul Taylor, was at our conference actually that we had in Nelson, and he described it as the autistic brain thinks like a Apple Mac processing system, and the neurotypical brain is like a PC processing system or a Windows processing system. And that's the challenge, because they don't talk to each other very well. So it's not, we treat autism not as a disability. We treat it as a difference and a different way of thinking, and then how do we create an environment where those two processing systems can interact differently. And that's, for me, what autism is. It's just a different way of thinking. I acknowledge that there will be people that will need a lot of support as time goes on, but there'll be some that don't need much support at all. So how do we get that balance right for our community as well is a really hard part, because some will need 24/7 care for the rest of their lives. And a lot of those people who are diagnosed as autistic will have comorbid diagnosis as well.
Every tangata fight Takiwātanga is different. If you fail with one strategy, don't stop. Keep moving forward. Always remember that for every failure you encounter is one step closer to your success. Thanks for tuning in. Till next time, memuto te whakawahare. Let's stop judging others. Me mahi tahi tato. Let's all work together. Kia kaha, kia maia. Stay strong, be brave.